you're Mexican or grew up with Mexican family, there's a big chance you've heard of a show called El Chavo del Ocho. If you haven't, then let me give you a quick rundown. It's a Mexican sitcom from the 70s made by Mexican comedian Roberto Mario Gomez Bolaños, commonly referred to as Chesperito. The show follows a homeless orphan nicknamed Chavo and his interactions with the people in the neighborhood. It was really popular and is still fondly remembered to this day. If you've never seen the show before, there's a chance you've seen the character Chavo referenced in Dead Rising 2. This is probably the only chance I'll ever get to mention this, but in the mission To His Company in Dead Rising 2, a comedian named Walter will appear as a survivor and bears a striking resemblance to Chavo from the TV show. This reference is really funny to me because that means that someone at Capcom Vancouver, a Canadian studio, snuck in a reference to a Mexican TV show in a series created by a Japanese company. Back to the main topic. A cartoon series eventually came out in 2006 and aired until 2014. Throughout the entire lifespan of the original show, there was never an official video game tie-in until the cartoon series. Even then, we only ever got 2 official video games, and I haven't really seen anyone else talking about them, so I'm taking advantage of hopefully being one of the first people to make a popular video about them. So now that we're familiar with the series, let's look at the first game, El Chavo on the Wii, a very creative title. Released in 2012, this game is a party game similar to Mario Party. Party games are pretty common right next to kart racers for licensed properties because of how simple and safe they are to market and design. Usually party-style games on the Wii are regarded as shovelware, so let's see how this one fares. Before we look at the actual game modes, I should mention that there's a language setting in the options. You can pick between English, Spanish, and Portuguese. It changes the text and the voices of the characters so that we don't have to listen to the English dub voices. I don't care who you are, the English dub is not as good as the original Spanish dub. I mean, come on, just listen to this.
Baggy. Sali, dale. ¡Órale!
Con su permiso.
Shaggy Baggy.
Okie dokie. Okie dokie. Okay?
The game starts off with 2 modes, Free Mode and Cup Mode. Free Mode lets you replay any minigame you've unlocked, and Cup Mode is basically the quote-unquote story mode or normal game. There's 2 cups to choose from, 10 and 15. It doesn't say what that means, but I assume it's the number of turns you get to play. The story is simple enough. Chavo gets exiled from the other kids' play session after he loses the ball or something, and then he ends up finding a magic game which turns out to be just snakes and ladders. The characters you get to play as are Chavo, Kiko, Ñoño, and Popis. The rules are simple enough and essentially like Mario Party. Each character has to collect the most medals. There are several ways to get medals throughout the match. Landing on a metal tile will get you a medal. You can get a medal when you collect 2 different toy pieces by landing on green tiles. Landing on memory tiles makes the player who lands on it play a game of memory and gives them a medal depending on how well they did. Passing go gets you a medal, and of course, playing the mini games that are started by landing on red barrels and at the end of each round will get you a medal. The mini games themselves are actually not bad, although sometimes it feels like the AI is cheating. They make use of the Wii Remote in different ways, like pointing at the screen for a shooting minigame, pointing and moving the Wii Remote. For the most part, they look and play pretty fine. I played them using an Xbox controller on Dolphin, so it was a little tricky trying to have most of them play the way that they were intended to. But from what I could tell, they were designed well enough. For a game that's clearly inspired by Mario Party, I did notice 1 or 2 minigames that resembled a pre-existing Mario Party minigame. But it would make sense that at least a few of the minigames included in a party game would resemble the minigames from a series that had already 10 entries at the time. A problem I kind of had with the game is that sabotaging other players is almost non-existent. A good thing with Mario Party is that you could at least try to balance the match by trying to sabotage the other players in the lead with something like stealing a star from them. In this game, the only sabotage there is just landing on a purple tile that takes away a single medal. That and the snakes you can land on are really the only obstacles in the game. When a player is in the lead, it's likely they'll keep their spot if they keep playing good consistently, and the player in last place will have a harder time to catch up. The good thing about Mario Party is that there's a lot of RNG involved, so it at least balances things out. Not having some kind of way to balance or even things out kind of defeats the point of a party game, at least one like this that takes a lot from Mario Party. But at the end of the match, all the medals are tallied up, and there's actually a final game to try and balance things out a bit. There's a unique cutscene, if you want to call it that, that'll play at the end of each match to initiate the final game, which is just tug of war from Mario Party. This game lets the bottom 3 players steal medals from the player who's in the lead. This is a good idea to balance things out, but the execution wasn't as good in my opinion. Once again, if you're good enough, it'll have no effect on the lead player, who seriously thought that skill-based wealth distribution was a good idea. Once this game ends, you get another cutscene declaring the winner, and the game is finally over. And honestly, that's really all there is to this game. Once you've played this game 2 or 3 times, then you've basically seen all there is to see. You could try to unlock all the minigames, but it would take probably some time to do. It's a simple little game, and I'll give it some credit. There's some potential, but it's kinda clear it's rushed and low budget. There are some obvious flaws throughout the game. First off, it's really void of any content, which is just kind of a big problem. You only get 1 board and 1 game mode for the entire game, or I guess 2 game modes if you really want to count the 10 and 15 cups separately. If they added at least 1 or 2 extra boards, it would greatly improve the game. Another problem is with some of the visuals. For the most part, the animations look good for 2D characters adapted into 3D, but for some reason, their animations look really wonky when they're moving across the board. And you'd figure that that's the one that they want to look the most good, considering that's what you'll be looking at for like 50% of the time. And the unique loading screens are a nice touch, but some of them look like they were drawn by a 14-year-old discovering DeviantArt for the first time. Also, having the different voice dubs is nice and actually a really great addition, but there are certain parts where the wrong dub is used.
After you.
Después de usted. Otro. Otro.
It's most obvious in the first cutscene of the game, which is kind of crazy. It sounds like they use the English and the Spanish voice for Kiko.
Dear Raymond?
That laugh does not sound like the English voice for any of the kids. Despite all the obvious flaws, this game is still fun, but I can't imagine willingly paying money for a game this empty and unpolished, especially with how much it goes for now. If you want to play it, I'd recommend you configure the controls in Dolphin, figure out how to map your controller, or maybe just get an adapter for your Wii remote. Or just play it on a modded Wii if you have access to one. If you find a means to play it, I say it wouldn't hurt to try. Well, let's look at the other and final game, El Chavo Kart. Released in 2014, the same year that the series ended. There's an unspoken rule that if a franchise is big enough, a kart racer will soon follow it at some point. Some way better than others, so let's see how Chavo Kart holds up. Released for the PS3 and 360, you can guess it's your standard kart racer. Before getting into a race, we're treated to a surprisingly good theme song. Off the bat, we have 2 options, Cup Mode and Challenge Mode. That's one thing I noticed that kart racers have that Mario Kart typically doesn't. They usually have some kind of challenge mode, at least the ones that I've played. Mario Kart set the standard and then proceeded to never give us a challenge mode ever again. Anyways, let's try out Cup Mode first. Let's pick our characters. We have Chavo, Kiko, Mr. Raymond. This is Worthmore. Okay, Professor Girafalde, Phoebe Jr., Mr. Belliarge? Yeah, that's the weird thing about this game, that it uses the English dub names for the characters, but luckily we get to keep the Spanish voices. A language option would have been nice, like in El Chavo for the Wii, but I guess it's better than having to be forced to listen to the English dub of the cast. Like imagine playing a JoJo game and being forced to hear the English dub characters. Speaking of JoJo, fun fact, Polnareff and Don Ramon, or Mr. Raymond as the English dub calls him, share the same English voice actor. But back to the game. There's different cups you can choose from. Each cup is based on a certain character. Beating a cup will unlock a new one, and beating 2 cups will unlock a new character. Once you start racing, the game actually feels really fun to control. Everything handles well. Driving, turning, and drifting feel really nice, and it has some unique mechanics. One of them is the ram ability. Using the right stick, you can quickly move your car horizontally to the left or the right to ram into other racers and gain a little boost and some extra points. That's another unique mechanic. By doing certain actions, you'll gain a little point bonus. Stuff like drifting, blocking hits from items, hitting other players with items. It's not clear where the points go towards, but it's neat nonetheless. Ramming could also be used to potentially reposition yourself or dodge certain attacks. Then there's also jumping, which is my favorite mechanic in the game. By pressing A on Xbox or X on PlayStation, you do a little hop. This can be used to your advantage by using it for small shortcuts or using it on ramps to get insane air. You can completely jump over parts of certain tracks. It's a little broken though because some of the tracks have you go so high that you hit the invisible walls. Then you also use it to jump on the heads of other racers for those bonus points. You're only ever forced to jump on certain tracks that require it, or unless you're in challenge mode, but I'll get to there later. Then there's the ability to pick up speed indicated by this wind effect when you tail behind another player, kind of like GTA 5 races. These extra features make the game unique enough to stand on its own, but there's also some uniqueness in the cups themselves. Typically cups in normal kart racers are 3 or 4 tracks per cup, but in El Chavo kart, there's 4 normal races and a challenge race right before the 4th race. If you don't pay attention to what the challenge is beforehand, it can be pretty confusing. There's stuff like elimination mode, eliminating whoever's in last periodically, King of the Hill where you have to stay in first the longest, and a few others. The races can get pretty long. They're definitely longer than your average Mario Kart Cup, but another unique feature is that you can quit mid-race and then continue it from where you left off on the next time you play. So that kind of makes up for it if you can't sit down for a full race. Then there's items like any other kart racer. They're basically the same as Mario Kart items, just reskinned. But what's funny about this game in particular is that some of the items are like if you ask someone to make Mario Kart items but Mexican. You have normal items like instead of green shells you have bowling balls, instead of red shells you have a paper airplane, and a beach ball that works just like the fireball. Then you have the Mexican items. You use a chili pepper as a mushroom, a piñata as a banana peel, and a torta de jamon as a golden mushroom. It doesn't get any more Mexican than that. Then there's some original and unique items. There's a pillow that attaches to the back of your car like how a banana peel or a shell would, but in this game it's the only item that's meant specifically for defense. There's also the newspaper which flips the controls of whoever it hits, and a horn which works basically like the super horn in Mario Kart 8. It can be used offensively to hit nearby racers, and defensively to destroy any incoming items. And if I'm not mistaken, this one actually predates the horn from Mario Kart 8, hence why I call it unique. Then there's the challenge mode of the game. Like the title implies, each race will consist of a unique challenge. They can range from anything like complete a race with items disabled only for you, jump on these racers in order before hitting the second lap, to something as unique as hitting 60 barrels within the time limit. Some of these are kind of clever. Like in this one challenge, you have to catch up to Don Ramon as Senor Barriga and hit him before the time limit. A nod to the ongoing gag of how he's constantly dodging him to avoid paying rent. A problem I have with the challenge mode is that after a while, these challenges start to get old and recycled to pad out the challenge mode. For every unique mission, you get one mission recycled 3 times. When it comes to this kind of stuff, I really prefer substance over quantity. If they really wanted to pad out the game mode, then they could have added a ranking system to try and challenge the player to 3-star or S rank each mission or something, like the mission mode in Tenkaichi 3. Then there's other modes available in the exhibition part of the game, which is basically the free mode. There's time attack where each player has a countdown, and you have to collect stopwatches in order to keep your time up, and whoever runs out gets eliminated. It's an interesting mode as it prioritizes getting your time up rather than being in first place. There's survival mode, which eliminates whoever's in last place every 20 seconds. Endurance is basically King of the Hill, giving points to whoever is in first place, and whoever gets to 100 points wins. Capture the Flag splits the racers into 2 teams, and whoever finishes with the flag wins. The flag is taken by bumping into the other player on the opposite team who has the flag. This mode encourages you to play strategically, trying to hold the flag while avoiding enemy players and protecting your teammates with the flag. Then there's coin mode, which is similar to time mode, where you have to be the first player to collect 100 coins. This one is also interesting, as you have to prioritize collecting coins over being in first place. You have to be fast while collecting them, but not too fast that you drive past them. It's really refreshing to see a Chavo game with a good amount of substance. These extra modes give replayability and can make playing with friends even better. The only issues I really had with this game is that Cup mode has no difficulty options, yet Exhibition does. Cup mode was pretty easy, and the only real challenge the game offered was in challenge mode. There were definitely a few missions that had me struggling for a bit. Having a difficulty option locked to the free mode was kind of a strange choice. Also, this is more of a nitpick, but I disliked how the cup mode didn't tell you the names of the tracks. And it might be me, but most of the tracks felt similar or repetitive, especially since the cups don't really have any exclusive tracks and are used randomly across different cups. But there are some pretty good ones. My favorite one is the Rainbow Road ripoff in space, and a neat detail is that some of the stages take place in Brazil because of the Brazilian following that the animated show gained. At least, I think so. I don't really know if these are based off of actual episodes from the show. I haven't really seen it. Overall, El Chavo Kart is a really fun experience. A well-designed game with good controls, graphics, and substance. Way more than El Chavo on the Wii. I'd highly recommend that you play this game, but there's a huge issue that makes it kind of difficult to play. And that's because this game sold terribly, so copies are upwards of to $100. If you have a good enough PC, I'd recommend you get a PS3 or a 360 emulator and play it there if you really wanted to that badly, or a modded 360 if you have one. It's one of the easier games to run, I can tell you that much, and sadly that's the end of the Chavo games available to play. It was very short-lived, but managed to end on a good note. With this game releasing at the end of the series and not selling very well, it makes sense that we never got another proper game. We ended up getting another Chavo Kart game on mobile. I'd take a look at it, but it got pulled off the App Store and I don't have an Android to play an APK. At least we got El Chapulín Colorado as a Fortnite and Fall Guys skin. For those that don't know, the character was from the show El Chapulín Colorado and was created by the same creator as El Chavo, and he played both characters. We might not get a new game, but at the very least we can hope that one day Chavo can show up as a Fortnite skin. And for my final thoughts, watch the cartoon in Spanish.